Maneus by John M. Bauer. And backward. Forgetful hours paint the most vivid memories. Every sound and smell holds more meaning. The images crystallize when there's no pressure to keep them in mind. Flickering lights and buzzing electricity. Calm in an eternal darkness. Defiant to the last, the scent of coffee reflects the twilight in the sky. Mundane events, white noise against stifled movements, decisions and regrets, subdued shadows. The most appetizing thoughts flew by in an instant. No one remembers exactly when the lost conversation started to become fuzzy around the edges. A thick blanket lying beneath coffee-stained masks, that familiar nightly sight. Marked by death and sore eyes, those distant acquaintances enjoyed each other's loneliness. Every evening as the clock ticked and talked onward to closing time. The scene was always the same dirty counter, the same dirty corner store. No offers and no exclusives, no daily specials and no holiday deals. The only customers were those who had no other choice or the rare happenstance passers-by. Sundry goods on a new silk road, more convenient than a catalog, magic in modernity and logistics. Those few wanderers added to the somber attire. Seats formalized around the counter with the register, the space uncomfortably fitting three. An hour to heal old wounds. They understood the importance of that time. The pain was worth the minutes of friendships. Camaraderie only found in cheap cups of coffee. Looks like it's getting late. The sole wage worker broke the sacred vow of silence and fixed his gaze on the clock behind the counter. He moved his head in an obvious motion to focus on the manager behind the register. The hour's pay fell on blind eyes. He was already half asleep. Those closed eyes found comfort and rest long ago. But that disinterest was a signal, a sign of honest compassion. The seasoned manager simply needed another prompt. Want me to take another look around? Who do you think you are? Life sprung from the wounded soldier. He looked up from behind the register, raising his eyes for the first time in over an hour. His worn smile hid scarred stories and unspeakable nightmares. Let's give our customers a few more minutes of peace. In the same motion, he reached back toward the old radio on a shelf behind his chair. Turning up the volume in a lazy act of authority, the soft sounds of the latest drama droned throughout the empty aisles of the corner store. All opposition caught between the waves. And so the wage worker slumped back into his seat. His tall stature stretched his uniform as he adjusted his posture against the crumbling wall. His eyes bore the familiar burden of a full day of unwanted labor. The only customer remained silent. He was dressed in black from the bottom of his shoes to the top of his hat. He stared at the last drops swimming in the bottom of his cup before the inevitable end. In an instant, his steady hand shifted from a loose dangle beneath his waist to a tight grip on the edge of the dirty countertop. You know, the defiance in his voice trailed off before completing the thought. The odd utterance left no ripples, and the radio filled the room yet again. But his thirst was far from quenched. Some things just aren't right. What's that? The manager slowly opened his eyes again, calmly lifting his head to meet the only customer. There's just some things that shouldn't be done. The outburst drew in the lights around the room. He pushed his nearly empty cup to the other end of the counter as he shifted in his seat several times. Something about finding the right posture to match the passion in his words. Can you believe some of the bullshit people pull, and without anyone saying anything? The lack of a response left him alone once again. All he could do is shift in his seat and attempt to ignite a conversation. I'm talking to you guys. Yes. The manager slightly sat up in his chair, adjusting his posture to glance at the clock. But none of us knew you expected a response. Well, I do. The customer gripped the counter, using the leverage to make himself seem taller. There's no way anyone can just do things and never have a second thought. He stood up as he looked over the two faces in the store, an awkward act to justify his odd actions to himself. How can you feel no regret? All right. The manager slowly moved his arms toward the edge of the counter. What are your regrets, then? You fought in the war like me, pushing the front up and down the mountains. All for nothing. It was chaos. All three lowered their eyes in recognition of the history haunting their dreams. People rarely spoke about the origin of their wealth or lack thereof. There was no time between the commutes and schedules. Sympathetic ears lost one after the other, the last one standing without the comfort of a few friends. Do you regret what we did? Not that, no. I didn't want to go down that road. I just meant in general. The customer's eyes darted around the room looking for an escape. There are so many decisions. He sat back down and covered his face with his hands. I just don't know. The manager knew better than to mix fresh blood and gritty salt. He relaxed back into his chair and closed his eyes as the worker looked back at the clock. The radio filled the air of the room again, and the atmosphere settled. A ward against the darker shadows outside. The hosts reacted to the latest twist, discussing the development with more enthusiasm than any of their recent regrets. Maneus? There was only one thing on the wage worker's mind. He wanted to end his shift and catch the early train home. The long hours paying for someone else's shoes weighed heavy on his ambitious soul. Go on, Duchal. Maneus let Duchal pick up his broom and check the store one last time before the shutters would come down. His footsteps faded away with the sloppy rhythm, and the regular pace of the evening returned. Coffee scents, radio sounds, silence among the solitary. A symphonic cacophony of hidden emotions and understated ideas, a refuge more than a coherent gathering, the ancient tales told and retold again and again, over and over, every day the same dream. But what do you think? The customer was mindlessly playing with the last few droplets in his cup again, moving the bits of liquid back and forth as he stared at the spherical shapes. Do you have any regrets? Me? The lazy manager, Maneus, stopped rocking in his chair and looked at his only customer for the night. His lost eyes wanted to say so much more. Or do you just want to tell me about your own problems? Let's hear what you have to say. The art of amusing oneself to survive long shifts. His soft expressions exposed a callous patience. Who said anything about my problems? The customer snapped back, gripping his cup tightly as he stood up. I just mean there's no way you don't have any regrets. Visibly angry and viscerally confused, he drew in the lights of the room once again, waiting for a grand statement. I just mean, it's just like you, Maneus. There's no way you thought your whole life would be owning this shop. There was a quiver and a quaver in his voice. Another night of crusades and misplaced confidence, and all Maneus could do was relax back into his chair. The radio filled the silence following the uninvited insult. Maneus let the soft sounds soak into their skin before smiling. He leaned forward in a powerful rebuttal. Do you know why I bought this building, Zishak? Maneus carried the lessons of his elders everywhere he wandered. He understood the power of well-fought wisdom. An awareness of the distant past that guided his words and career, he held tightly to the virtue of surviving confrontation. Maneus met Zishak's stare dead on. Silent seconds. Nothing needed to be said before leaning back into his chair. We both know how war changes maps and minds. I didn't mean to start a fight. Zishak opened up with his hands to offer an apology for his outstanding aggression. I don't even know anymore, Maneus. I'm sorry if I lost the plot, but sometimes I get so angry I don't even know who I am. Who are you, Maneus? Maneus rocked in his chair as a response. Zishak sat back down. The familiar scene made its way around the room. Echoes from other people in different places and times. Strangers were more at home than they would ever admit. Ding dong. The sound of a customer left the counter unstirred. Ceremonies and holy vigils kept the candle brightly lit. Only Maneus looked up to fulfill the minimum of his responsibilities. His eyes widened and his posture straightened at what he saw. Awestruck by the beauty of this new persona, his entire body shifted as his younger instincts took control. Not wanting to stand out, he looked across the counter in a clumsy disguise. His eyes glazed over in bored comfort before turning his attention toward the unexpected guest. She shopped across the empty aisles for more than a few minutes, and Maneus continued his wide-eyed stares. Order was perhaps the wrong word at that moment. She danced with a uniquely rare comfort and ease, carefully picking out her items to bring to the register. Maneus folded his face into a genuine smile as he watched the performance. So much care put into such a mundane and unimportant task. A mediocre sandwich, a bag of off-brand chips, a novelty keychain. Her waltz took her down every section of the small store before bringing the selection up to the old dirty counter. 250, my friend. Maneus read out the numbers as he slowly shifted in his chair. Their eyes locked in an old war. Her lips were painted in a dark red as she let down her mask, electricity crawling down her arm and falling onto Maneus behind the register. Is that all? Her voice put on a veil of mock surprise at the low price. Would you like to pay more? Maneus answered with a step to match the tempo of her dance. She grinned with her upper teeth in response, before handing over the money and twirling as she moved out the door. Such an exchange should have been nothing to remember, but it left a lasting impression on the night. Maneus found himself watching closely as the door closed and she began a new dance into the chaos. Ding-dong. G-Shock was still anxious from the previous conversation as the woman's presence left the store. His head was spinning at the hints of a story, and he felt compelled to know the reasons hiding behind the building. He mumbled into his cup without looking up. So you never even really wanted to buy this place? Maneus let his eyes wander back across the counter before deciding to continue the story. That's not exactly how I'd put it. He sat up and fixed his vision onto G-Shock. Regret. What? G-Shock responded as he played with the last drops of coffee in his cup. I bought the store, the entire building, out of regret. While Maneus waited for a response, he moved his arms to the top of the counter. He knew how to capture G-Shock's full attention. I didn't always have this life. Do you know what it's like to work and not know why? Judging by your daily visits, I think you do. I had that life once. I really did. I worked in the machine and put in the hours to ensure the best life my deck could deal. Day in and day out, one commute leads to the next. Lunch breaks started looking like opportunities for unfortunate accidents as I crossed the busy streets and reconciled my insanity. I regretted the life I was living. Sure, there was more to be found in the paths to greater success in the name of fleeting progress, but I soon understood my journey would lead me elsewhere, and I regretted it deeply. And that's what led me to leaving. I bought this shop and started running it and kissed all the bullshit goodbye. Even on the worst days, I can easily say it's better being bored here than when I was stuck shoveling regret. The room fell silent as the radio program ended. Maneus closed his eyes and let G-Shock continue to pretend there was some coffee at the bottom of his cup. Not knowing what to say never means there's nothing to be said. How easily such unspoken empathy is understood is the magic behind an otherwise unremarkable store, the strong connection between those distant acquaintances. The meditation was interrupted with Dushal's return. Everything looks okay. He stormed back into the room with a crooked smile and a full bag of the afternoon's waste. Guess we're good to go home now, right? Maneus leaned back in his chair and looked at Dushal. We should be good. Once the last customer is done with his drink, we can close up shop for the night. His eyes were heavier as the last minutes of the workday quickly approached. What do you think, Dushal? G-Shock crumpled up his cup while staring at the counter. About what? Dushal responded with an innocent smile. He was already gathering the last supplies to shove them into storage. You having one of those nights? G-Shock wants to know if you have any regrets. Maneus relaxed further into his chair, glancing at the clock one last time. He seems to think it's an incredibly important topic, something worthy of discussion in my shop. Well, sure. I regret coming to this shitty job every day. Dushal laughed at his own joke. Only after a few chuckles did he remember to nervously make sure Maneus saw the humor as well. Come on now, Maneus smiled with soft eyes. It's not that. It's just this isn't where I'm meant to be. Dushal pulled out his wallet to show a few photos of his hometown near the mountains. I came to the city to be able to build a new life, the kind of life that's impossible where I'm from. But it can be hard to get anything off the ground here. Besides, it's no secret I'm working below my ability in this dump. You all know it. Maneus laughed as he held up his fist. Dushal, you should know if you said that in the kind of job you're looking for, you'd be gone before your second coffee. The group let out a round of polite laughs and subtle nods as they agreed on the abstract idea of longing for a better life. A new program started on the radio, filling in the gaps between the remaining minutes on the clock. The night sky colored the unfinished expressions left on the counter for another day. The three strangers got up from their seats, walked past the front door of the store, and into the chaos once more. Closing time played out in a song of buzzing lights, jumping from buildings to taxis to the soft sounds of slumber.